Welcome back to The Director's Cut, a podcast by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we're bringing you a panel discussion from the DGA Special Projects Committee's recent webinar event, a conversation with episodic television directors, how inspiration fuels the art of directing. Last month, directors Michelle MacLaren, David Nutter, Ken Whittingham, and Jessica Yu participated in a lively conversation moderated by DGA past president Paris Barclay, where they delved into who and what inspires them to continue topping themselves artistically on series such as The Morning Show, Game of Thrones, Atypical, Fosse, Verdon, and Station 19. Other topics of discussion included who they admired when first starting out, what keeps them going during the COVID-19 pandemic-inspired production hiatus, and how they expect their work and their process might change in the future.
Thank you all. Welcome to our second Special Projects webinar via Zoom. We'd like to get into our panel today, but because it is the elephant in the world, I want to assure you that the things that are happening in our world today are going to have a profound effect on what we do and how we do it. So we're going to spend some time talking about that towards the end of our broadcast. So as this is Blackout Tuesday, we also want to let you know that we are not working today. We are sharing with our members, we are creating a community, and we're reinforcing some of the values that we believe in, that the DGA believes in, and we as members believe in. But we will get more into that towards the end of our broadcast. First things first, we're prepared to share with you our thoughts on how inspiration fuels the art of directing. So let's get started. Today we want to look at the art and craft of directing for television in this particular time from a different angle. So I've asked our panelists to look deeper in preparation for this panel and to discuss as openly as they're willing to share what inspires them from the start through each work they create to see how they see themselves, how they saw themselves, and how we see the future. So I've asked them to be concise, but who knows, to give us the real deal. I'm hoping they'll share a lot of their hearts as well as their heads here today. So let's start. David, who or what specifically inspired you to become a director?
Well, I first wanted to be Barry Manilow. It was the first order of the agenda. I wanted to be the next Barry Manilow, and I realized I wasn't going to be the next Barry Manilow. For 3 years of music school, I'm finding, what am I going to do now? So I decided to take a Super 8 film class. That's third year of summer, and just to see if I could maybe write music for movies. And so I did that, and then I really loved the whole process of really putting film together, dirty your hands and rub your elbows and the whole thing and getting that going. And what it really did for me was the fact that in music and singing, that gave me an emotional release, gave me a chance to kind of let my emotions go, let my emotions act and open up and so forth. And with filmmaking, I felt I could do the same thing. So I started writing music for my films, and I got really into the directing side of it. It was really something that was really worked hand in hand very well.
Wow. So I've known you for a long time, but I didn't know that it was music. Let's go to Jessica. Jessica, what inspired you to get started in this trip to director's chair?
Well, I didn't have any light bulb moment. I grew up always loving making things, but honestly, I don't know if it actually occurred to me. There weren't a lot of Asian American women out there making films, so it just didn't register so much for me. But I think, and I didn't go to film school, but I think I fell in love with the work. My first job in production, I was a PA on some food commercials, not very inspiring, but then I worked on some documentaries, and the very first one was Frida Lee Mock's documentary about Maya Lin. And Frida's a wonderful, very prominent Asian American director. So on that shoot, the very first shoot, they slung a Nagra around my neck, and I was out there recording sound. So I was like right there watching the story be gathered, and I had a front row seat watching that film be made all the way through editing. And so I didn't know in that moment, I want to be a director, but I knew I wanted this. I wanted this process. I wanted this work. I wanted to see this experience shaped in this through film. So I think that was the first spark, certainly.
How about you, Michelle?
I like Jessica, I'm not sure if there's any one moment, but I somehow knew I wanted to be a director from a very young age. And as a kid, we grew up in the summers on an island that had no electricity. So our only form of entertainment was charades, telling stories. And we did that a lot for years. And I knew I wanted to get into the business. And I started as a PA on a food commercial as well. And then I worked my way up and became a producer. But in the back of my mind, I was always thinking about directing, and I would study acting on the side because I wanted to understand what actors go through, and I take directing classes. But I was doing fairly well at producing, and I became a producer on The X-Files. And I was producing alongside directors like David Nutter and Kim Manners and Rob Bowman. And I had a front row seat to the best film school ever in watching these guys. And I was thinking, I want to do what they're doing. And then my grandmother passed away. My mom called me and she said, I found a letter in your grandmother's things and you need to read it right away. And she sent it to me. And it was a letter I'd written her just telling her what I'd been up to. And I said in this letter that, I just saw a movie and I hope someday I can direct a movie as well as this. I didn't write the name of the movie. It was probably restricted or something. But I wrote the date, and I was 13 years old. And my 13-year-old self gave me a kick in the pants. And I went to the producers of The X-Files and I said, I'd like to direct. And I had earned it at this point. I mean, this is a long time coming. And I got very lucky because the writer of that first episode was Vince Gilligan.
Wow. That's a great story. Ken, go for it.
Well, in college, my junior year, I got a job at CBS in the mailroom, and worked. I was just supposed to work that summer, and then I ended up getting a job as a page when I went back to school. And so I worked on various comedies like WKRP, Three's Company, shows like that, and it was a lot of fun. After graduating, I have a degree in journalism. I started working at CBS News, but didn't really like being in the news business. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be here in LA. So I decided to take a break and try to figure out what I was going to do. And someone's called me, a friend of mine who I did a page with, asked me if I wanted to work on the show 227 as a PA. And initially I thought that was a little beneath me, but then I decided, hey, I don't have a job. I need to do something. So I started working on the show. And there I was inspired by a gentleman by the name of Garen Keith, who was an African-American director. And I said, wow, this is really cool. This guy is. And initially I wrote a script for 227. I thought I wanted to be a writer, but after watching Garen work, he was my first inspiration. And after that, Jay Sandridge, and then an English director by the name of Edgar Wright. So those are probably my biggest inspirations. But initially, I thought I wanted to be a writer, a journalistic writer. So.
Cool. Well, let's look at the flip side of this. Was there ever a time for y'all that you just thought you'd have to hang it up, that you were not, it's not going to work, you're not going to make it? And how did you get over that? And what inspired you to get back on your feet? I just would share that I was fired from a movie when I was a music video director. I was in pre-production and got fired. I didn't work for a year, but it did light a fire under me to restart in that time and to rebuild. So anybody who wants to jump in, your biggest failure and how did you get over it?
Mine wasn't a failure. It was actually a wrong circumstance and the wrong person got blamed for it. I have been very fortunate. I directed a little bit of a movie with Don Johnson back in Miami. It got a lot of critical acclaim. I came to Los Angeles and I waited and wanted to direct. And I was reading for producers and everybody you can imagine. And I just couldn't get a job anywhere. So I went and played golf. And one day I was pissed off and didn't know if I'd ever work again. And I happened to play with Patrick Hasberg, who had created the TV show 21 Jump Street. And we played 18 holes of golf. And he says, let's go to the 19th hole. We had a beer. And he asked me lots of questions. And I was like, okay, yeah. Because I lost all hope at that point. And the next day, Patrick called Steve Beers and said, I want to hire David Nutter to direct an episode of the show. And he said, well, Steve Beers said, well, we look at this movie, we'll talk. And he said, no, hire him. So I got that job. And 6 months later, I got the job and got married and the whole thing. My life was starting out. And then they said, you're going to come back in September. And I didn't get called back. I kept saying, what's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? So 2 years goes by, and all kinds of things about my agent and all that kind of stuff that you don't hear about. But I didn't really call the producer directly, and I should have. Because once the agent, I left my agent, then the doors opened very well for me. It was fantastic after that.
Interesting. Michelle, did you ever hit a wall and find your way back?
I think probably a few walls, a few times. I guess one in particular was I was a relatively new director, and I was a very new director. I had one credit to my name, The X-Files, and I decided I knew that I was never going to be looked at for the Emmys or anything, but I thought in those days they send out VHS tapes, and it cost a lot of money, and I paid a lot of money to send my VHS tape out. Because I thought maybe people that have shows, maybe producers will watch it and I might get hired. And Mimi Leader watched it. And I had one credit to my name, and she hired me on her new show, John Doe. And it was an awesome and terrifying experience all at the same time. But I was really grateful to me. And Steve Beers also gave me an opportunity like David. And then I was doing a family show, and I was supposed to do 2 episodes. For ABC Family. And after the first episode, I was replaced. I was fired. And the showrunner and I didn't really connect creatively. And I was devastated. I had very few credits to my name. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And what went wrong? And I remember I talked to my dad about it, and he said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, we were a runaway train about to hit a brick wall. And I spoke up about it. And he goes, well, next time, are you going to speak up about it or let the train hit the wall? And I said, well, I'm going to speak up about it. He goes, could you do it differently? And I realized, yeah, I could do it differently. I needed to see who this particular showrunner was and understand that I wasn't a producer on the show, and I needed to communicate it differently. It was a very valuable lesson for me. But my confidence was shot a bit. And then I got a phone call, and it was from Law and Order SVU. And they said, we'd like you to come to New York on Tuesday to direct an episode. And I said to my agent, what do they want to interview me? How do they know me? What's going on? He goes, no, get on the plane on Tuesday. I said, okay. And it was over Thanksgiving, and we were shooting, and then we came back from Thanksgiving. And I said to the executive producer, how was your Thanksgiving? And he said, oh, it was great. Mimi Leader. And I said, oh, I know Mimi. And he goes, I know you do. That's why you're here. So I am very indebted and grateful to Mimi. And shortly after that, I got a call from Vince Gilligan asking me to come and do Breaking Bad. And I knew this was this incredible opportunity. And I thought, Michelle, just put away all your fears and everything. Just go for it creatively. What can happen? You could get fired, and you already have been. So if you fall down, pick yourself up and keep on going. And I have a lot of people I'm grateful to.
All right. Jessica, let's go to you.
Yeah. So, coming out of documentaries and indie films, you always feel like your last film is your last film. The problem is never the work, is always the money. So there was a long time where I just wasn't sure. It wasn't so much hitting a wall, just not sure if I was still moving forward, because there could be such a long time between films, between projects. I mean, I did a documentary that took 5 years, and I love those 5 years, but I loved it more if it were 2 years, But I do think that has helped me be more agile in the episodic world, definitely. And I think the thing that kept me going, though, and I've tried to keep this throughout my career, is that I always have a project running parallel that is something that is my own, something that I've generated, or is kind of more of a passion project. Because if you have a passion project, chances are you are going to see it all the way to the end. And so it just keeps that momentum going, even when the other side of you is wondering, how am I going to do this as a career? How am I going to do this professionally? And that certainly is the turning point, was a turning point for me. It was getting into commercials and into episodic, and knowing that I could actually support myself and my family. You can't do that on an indie film made every 5 years, But I do remember I was on a panel when I was first up and coming, and I think it was at Sundance or something, and somebody asked, would you ever sell out and do TV? And I remember saying something like, okay, that's kind of a moot point because no one wants to buy me. I would actually love to sell out. And thank goodness there was those opportunities, because right now episodic TV is one of the most creative places you can be in the world. So I'm very grateful for that.
Cool. Ken, you may now unmute, although I think the echo is coming from you, so you're going to have to stay muted when you're not talking.
Okay. Are you sure it was me?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I started, I was a stage manager on a show called Malcolm and Eddie, and I got my first opportunity to direct on that show. And so I directed a couple the first season, a couple the second season, and so now I'm on my way. And so the third season, producers called me and said, okay, but I was still stage managing. So they said, okay, you have to make a choice. Either you're going to stage manage or you're going to direct. What do you want to do? And I said, well, it depends on how many episodes I'm going to get to direct. So they said, okay, we'll give you 5 episodes. And so I'm like, that's great. That's enough to send me on my way. We got new producers that came in, and then one of the actors on the show decided that he wanted to direct them all. And so my 5 went to 0. And so now I'm kind of out there with no job at all, 2 kids. And the year before I had directed an episode of Moesha. And so producer from Moesha, Jim Tripp, called me and said, do you know anybody that might be interested in being a stage manager on the show? And so I said, me. So I went over to stage manage a show that I had already directed. So it was a very humbling experience. And at that same time, my agent had called and said, well, it doesn't look like you're getting any work this year, and we're going to drop you from, I think I was with Broder Curlin at the time. So I was dropped from my agency. I was doing a show. But being that I have an athletic background, I never thought about quitting. It never came across, came across my mind that I would quit. So I just said, I just have to do something to reinvent myself. So luckily, I got another opportunity on a show called The Parkers, and that was the beginning of. And then I had to reinvent myself, and I did a bunch of great stuff on the show, and that kind of reignited my career. So that's what happened with me.
Well, let's shift gears again and talk about joy and pride. I want you to tell us about a particular instance when you felt either incredibly proud or incredibly joyful on set. I mean, one that comes to mind with me last season, we had a homeless encampment that was in our shop on our location, and I didn't mind it, but apparently we couldn't photograph them because we didn't have the right to. So they had to go, but I didn't want to displace them. But when I came on the day, they were gone. And what I discovered is that our location, one of our location managers, actually worked the entire weekend to find them places to go, to find them housing, to find them temporary places to live. She went to each of them and figured out where they could possibly go. Instead of just, like the cops, brushing them aside, she connected with all of them. And I was so proud of the show and proud of what she had done. We gave her an award. We gave her Employee of the Episode. But that was just a token, because what I really felt was that's a show that has a big footprint and can cause a lot of wreckage in its path. But here's one person who has taken the time to care about the people that we impact. Moments like that, times when you felt really proud to be doing what you're doing. Anyone wants to go first?
For me, it was the episode of Reigns of Castamere, The Red Wedding. With directors in television, you don't always get reviews at the box office and all that kind of stuff because we're directing episodic television. So we worked very hard on the episode and turned out quite well, I think. And what came after that, I didn't expect. What came after that was, of course, YouTube exploded and people were shooting pictures of their friends watching the episode who'd read the book. And it was amazing to get a chance to see people reacting to what I had done shooting-wise. I wasn't seeing the screen. I could just watch them watch the show. And that was something that really mattered to me quite a bit. And I realized that for me, I got to get the audience to care about something. And if I do that, then they'll fall into it and jump into the show all the way. And with Game of Thrones, they spent 3 long years really building that background, building that relationship with the audience. And they hit a home run with that, I think, as far as the story was concerned. And that was a real joyful moment. And I said, well, it may not be a $100 million movie, but I'm happy with that.
Anyone else wants to go? Jessica?
Oh, well, it's sorry. I got this question late, and I realized that I actually experience joy a lot when I'm working.
That's cool.
so it's so hard to pick. And so but I do remember there was one time it was kind of an intense sort of joy on American Crime, John Ridley's great show, that really broke things open for me in terms of like what could be on network. There was we had a 7-minute scene. I'm sorry, it was like a 7-page scene that John said, yes, you can totally do this in one shot. You know, you can, I will be behind you 100%. And so shooting this very intense shot where it's mostly one person speaking, and the other characters, they might not even be on, that we might not see their faces in the frame. They might just be moving in the background. Everyone was so focused, though. I loved seeing the support of everybody in the crew and everybody in the scene, knowing that it was really about this character giving testimony. And it's always that beautiful thing too, where when you have something like that, the release of, you know, joy and the sort of collective high five when you know that you got it. That was particularly intense there because it wasn't a big showy shot. You know, it wasn't something where, oh, you know, this has to fall in exactly the right place. Then we drop into here. It was just this very intense, slow move. And I really, that one stands out because of no one caring about how much they were going to be featured, just getting it right.
Beautiful. Michelle or Ken, whoever wants to jump in?
I think the most joyous moment that I've had in television was one of my first network shows, which was Scrubs. And Randall Winston gave me this great opportunity, and Bill Lawrence gave me this great opportunity to get off UPN and start doing major network stuff. So we had this one scene that I had this vision of we had to do it from a vantage point where we could see the whole city. So I decided to take a crane and put it on top of a hotel, the London hotel, where we could see all of Los Angeles, and do a oneer. I wanted to do like the one character coming from the bar, going to the table. We did a 360 around the table, and then they all get up to go dance, and then we pull out and we see the whole city. And so it was a oneer. So I think everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is a very ambitious shot that he wants to do," but I just had the confidence that we could do it. So he did it. It was very expensive, and it was just only probably a 2-minute scene, but we did it, and it worked, and it was just we did 4 takes, but we really got it, I think, in the second take. And so after we did it, we achieved it. That was the last shot of the night, and the whole cast came up and said, "Welcome to Scrubs." You know, so that was probably one of the best moments.
I love that. Michelle?
Well, like Jessica, I experience a lot of joy because every time we try something really hard and it works, I feel joy and relief. And I'm very humbled by the crew and how hard everybody works. But just to think of something recently, I just finished shooting a new show that hasn't come out yet called Coyote. And it's starring Michael Chiklis. And I'm one of the producers, as is Michael. And we convinced the studio and the network to let us shoot it, 100% of it in Mexico and in northern Baja, all over the place, and in really remote, wild locations. And, you know, we were convinced we could do this and we could pull it off. And we had no idea what we were getting into. I mean, we faced challenges on a daily basis. Our first AD, Brett DeSantos, who's amazing, 6 times a day, we would look at each other and our jaws would drop with the challenges that were presented to us. Our crew was amazing. 98% Mexican crew, absolutely fantastic. Anyway, we were out in the desert for 8 days of the first 2 episodes. And we were at these very, very remote locations. And we had one day in this really super remote location. And when we got there, we had been presented with some challenges where we literally had about 5 hours to shoot 5 scenes, 5 actors, motorcycles involved, people hiding, going up sand dunes and hiding behind rocks and all this stuff happening. And I knew there was no way that we were going to make this day unless we did a Hail Mary. And I went to the AD and the DP and I made a suggestion. And then I went to each of the actors and I walked them through all 5 scenes, one at a time, what they were going to do. And we placed 3 cameras in 3 different places, one high and wide, one low and wide, long lens. And we did a play in the middle of the desert. And it was a 22.5-minute take. And at the end of it, all 5 scenes straight through, I said, cut. And you heard Brett go, oh my God, it worked. And it was, I don't suggest anybody does this. This is not the right way to be approaching scenes, but sometimes you have to punt in the spur of the moment. You have to come up with something. And I was so incredibly proud and humbled by the actors who went through this entire thing, the crew that were in all these different locations and I couldn't communicate with them. And it was like doing a live play. And everybody at the end of it just cheered. And there was such joy and happiness that we actually pulled it off. And it was a wonderful moment.
Love that. Well, that's a good segue because now I want to talk about how you generate inspiration. Because every time you open a script or start a project, you're going to have to be inspired to do it in a particular way. So what are your sources for inspiration? What do you look to? Do you look to books? Do you look to particular movies? How do you get yourself inspired? Do you pray? Do you just, what do you do to generate inspiration? Is what I want to know. Because then I can use it. Let's start with Jessica. We haven't started with you lately.
Okay. I think, well, maybe it's because I come out of documentaries, but I love going to source material. I love to find, sort of primary sources. And so like for Fosse Verdon, of course, I watched all that jazz and read the Sam Wasson biography. And so there was a lot of material there. I just directed the finale of Hollywood, and there's a big set piece in there that's the 1948 Oscars. And so our production designer, Matthew Ferguson, had a really wonderful, a wealth of visual material from the 48 Oscars. And so I just wanted to look at this stuff and really let that particular glamour soak in. It's really hard to resist. But then you look at all the pictures and there's virtually no diversity depicted, right? So this show is about wish fulfillment. So I was thinking, I want to take the inspiration was the glamour of that time and then marrying it with this idea of what if things were different? So taking every modern tool we have to try to make that experience more particular to our characters. So in shooting this, when we were shooting this, we had, we had 6 cameras, not enough days. It was really, we had so much time pressure, but we sort of used that to try to create, again, this feeling of like we're putting on the show. So there was like a show behind the show kind of feeling. And when you see these, hundreds of background actors, everyone dressed to the nines, and you really feel like you're there. And our AD team was just spectacular. We had Michelle Laboucherie, who was everybody about what was going on, where we're feeling. You're here at the Oscars. And so I think for that, it was really trying to transpose that feeling of looking at that source material and thinking, I want to feel what that felt like, but I want to tell this story. So trying to make, spoiler alert, there's a lot of winning for our characters in the show, trying to make those moments really personal and each one feel different. And then again, just trying to make it the perfect experience of that kind of glamour. What if we could have that? So,
David, what about you? Because you do a lot of things that are in the supernatural sci-fi world. How do you find an original way to approach it? How do you get prepared to do something different or not?
Well, it's a situation where after I did the X-Files, people would come to me and they would say, well, let's go do a show that's kind of like the X-Files, the whole bunch, same whole thing, and do something different and bigger and all the science fiction stuff. That's not the secret to the X-Files. The secret to the X-Files is the fact that this is real world. This is our world they live in. And these are real people. You may not always understand what Scully and Mulder are saying in their use of verbiage and words and so forth, as you wouldn't with sometimes Anthony Edwards and George Clooney. But you see that they're passionate about what they do. And they really mean that. They really go after these things. And it's really means the world to them. And I'm also really attracted to shows about broken families, I think. I think that shows like The Mentalist, where the Simon Baker character lost his wife and daughter, And supernaturally, you had two brothers going after their dad after their mother was killed. My father died in a car accident when I was a year and a half old, and I was always kind of drawn to that kind of story. And it was a situation where I always get drawn to those kind of stories. But when you talk about a moment of wanting to really be inspired, it's important and necessary for me to be inspired. But what also is important is to inspire the crew, inspire the actors. That's the job of the director, I think. Because once they know that you know what you're doing and you give it, you really care, that's so very important. When I did Band of Brothers, I realized that people who watch the show may have never seen an inch of footage from the real World War II. We have a responsibility to make this great. ER was the same way. Pacific was the same way. And I kind of treat all the shows like that. I want to give it a sense of reality, but also try to inspire the crew, because I've worked a lot of times with crews and I may get a few more setups here and there, whatever, but they feel like they're following somebody. And I think the Pied Piper part's very important too. People want to be directed, and actors want to be directed. Jamie Gandolfini wants to be directed. Vanessa Redgrave wants to be directed. And you have to just go in and do your thing and direct. And to me, that really is the thing that inspires me.
Love that. Ken or Michelle, I mean, do you just steal things? You actually, is there anything where you just take like I do?
Well, when I start a new project, I'll use The Deuce, for example, which is a pilot I did for HBO, which had to do with the history of pornography in the 70s in New York City. And I like to immerse myself in the world that I'm going to be working in. And so there's great photography from that era. There's great music. There's great films from that era. And I was very inspired by all of them. The DP and I walked the streets of New York for weeks and really studied and learned the city. And I was really hoping that the audience would be able to feel and smell, because there was a garbage strike then, what New York was like and how different it was from today. And there was so much wonderful inspiration. And of course, one of the main inspiration is Martin Scorsese from doing Taxi Driver. But they were doing vinyl. It was for HBO, and HBO was doing vinyl at the time. And they said, Michelle, the one thing is just don't make sure it looks different from vinyl. And I thought, oh no, Scorsese did the pilot of vinyl, and he's like one of my greatest inspirations. I thought I better not watch vinyl because I'll be influenced by it. So I've never seen vinyl. And, but I watched all these great movies, like Taxi Driver and Clute and Shaft and, French Connection. And I realized too that these filmmakers, as great as they are, they're amazing. They made these movies in the 70s. They walked out the door, and anywhere they pointed the camera, it looked like the 70s, because it was. But we were recreating something. And so we were inspired by all these wonderful people. And the production designer, the cinematographer, the costume designer, and I put together a huge lookbook for everybody that would show the feel and the look for the show. And I think by the time we started shooting, I felt, hopefully through osmosis, the whole crew was going to, have this feeling for the show. And of course, we started shooting, and things change. You don't have time to do this. You're throwing things out right, left, and center. And I remember sitting down for the first cut of the pilot with the editor, and I had sent this lookbook to the editor. And I finished watching his cut, and I picked up the lookbook, and I thought, I wonder if we kept anything from it. And we did. The essence of what we wanted to do was there. And I think it was because it was a collaboration of everybody. And so all these people, as fast as we were moving, as we were making choices, we were making them relevant to the story that we were telling.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Ken?
I think what inspires me, and what has always inspired me, is the ability to make people laugh. And it's such a drug. I can remember being in school. I was a guy, me and my friends and I, we were always the kind of guys that would stand in the hallway and, crack jokes and tease people. And now that's considered bullying. But it's, we really enjoyed Richard Pryor and SNL and all these shows. And so we were that's what really inspires me. So what inspires me today, are some of the shows that I watch and I go, oh, I think I could really do something with that show. I want to be on that show. So I really seek out certain types of comedy and certain writers. It's very important to me. And that's what really inspires me, because I want to be able to put, as James Burrell says sometimes, I put leaves on the tree. I want to be able to make it better. So that's the inspiration for me. How can I make this better? Working with people like Tina Fey, who's just, in my opinion, just a genius, and to see if I can possibly top her, if I can possibly make her funnier than she already is. So I think it really starts with, for me, in the comedy world, the written word first, and then how can I make it better? But I'm constantly, I'm just so in the zone whenever I have a script. I'm just totally there. I'm dreaming about it, thinking about it. How can I make it better? So I think that's my inspiration.
That is great. I just got a question from a member here that asked, and I think it's a very good question, so I'll pose it. How often do you pull from your personal life to frame a scene or develop a character? That's from Sterling Brown, DGA member. How often do you pull from your personal life? And it's one of the things I really want to get to, too, is how does that, David, you touched on it a little bit in how your background influenced the choices you made, but how does your personal life figure in? And is there a specific time where something either happened in your personal life or you were able to develop it into the story?
Well, to find something of my own that I can think about, I'll have to take a minute for that. But the thing that I really try to do is, in working in preparation, is getting to know the actors and getting to know what they're all about, where they're from, what their whole plan story is, just to get to know them as people. And then get to watch them and do their work and so forth before I begin to direct them. And what happens a lot of times is the fact that my goal is to try to find out something personal to them that I can relate the moment to, that I can make it personal for them, that I can make it feel like, this is something that could really touch them in some respect. So an example of that was in Game of Thrones, Brienne is left by Jaime at the Winterfell. And there was a big scene there, and there's one that he was leaving her, telling her that he was a bad man, and he did everything for Cersei, and I'm leaving you, and he just get some swords and rides away. And she kept kind of coming up, I guess, a little bit blank at that moment. And so I went over to Nikolai, and I said, Nikolai, on the last line, don't say those words. Say, and I don't love you either. And I don't love you anymore. And Brienne's character has always been one that so honored and so held Jaime in such wonderful, he was close to her heart all the time. And so Nikolai, who's a tremendous actor, and they both are, it was a situation, the scene went on, and we did the scene, and he was telling her he's not going to, all these terrible things. And then his last line was, and I don't love you. And Gwendolyn, she lost it. It was a surprise, something she wasn't expecting. And it was really something very special. And I really felt very happy about that. And it was good. And, the next time Nikolai said, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then Gwendolyn said, could you do that again? That was really helpful to me that time. It was really helpful that I got a chance to do that. So I was happy that she got nominated for Emmy this last year. And I thought that may have had a little something to do with it.
Great. Anyone else want to tackle how their personal life might have helped them frame a scene or to develop a character?
Sure. One time we had a table read on Blackish, and the script it just wasn't right. Something wasn't. It just wasn't reading correctly. Something was wrong with it. I don't know. And I never chime in during for the network notes right after the table read, but I kind of pull something from my personal life. I have a wife and 3 kids, well, young adults now. But we were talking about the family dynamic, and my fix to the show, to the episode was that a lot of times kids will try to play parents against each other. They'll in a manipulative way, and so my fix was that you can't be friends with your kids, when when you can't let your kids get in between you and your wife. You have to be a united front, and they will try, but no matter how hard they try, you have to can't negotiate with the kids when it comes to parenting. You and your wife have to be on the same page. So that's one of my stories, and that actually fixes
and that worked by the script. I love that. Jessica or Michelle, do you have a personal story that invaded your world? You're thinking?
I would say that a piece of ourselves come through in everything that we do. It's like whether you're writing or directing or painting or playing music, we're subjective storytelling. And so I think always a piece of us comes through. And I have many moments. I was held at gunpoint in Uganda many years ago. And I can tell you there's many times on film sets, I think to myself, if I got through that, I could get through this moment. But I have not a specific moment on a film set, but something that influenced me greatly was when I was 25 years old. I sat down on an airplane. I never talked to the people beside me, but for some reason, I turned to the gentleman beside me and we started chatting. And it was John Badham. And I thought, I'm going to do the really obnoxious thing and say, I would like to be a director someday. Do you have any advice for me? And John was so gracious and generous. And for 2.5 hours, he talked to me about directing. And the most profound thing he said to me was really, really simple. And it's something I've never forgotten. He said, imagine the cameras in the hallway of an apartment building. Your actor is coming out their apartment door, walking down the hall. They do it once and you want them to go faster. He goes, never say go faster. Say to him, okay, can you do it again? You forgot your keys and you're late for the most important meeting of your life. And that was one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given to. And it came from just a very personal moment on an airplane. And I'm really grateful to John for that.
Love that. Jessica, do you want to add anything on this?
Yes, actually, I have the most personal one, which is that so I did a episode of a Netflix comedy called Lady Dynamite, and it's about the comedian Maria Bamford. It's sort of a surreal take on her real life. And the episode that they asked me to do is where she and the man, the character who in real life eventually becomes her husband, Scott Cassidy, they break up. So I'm very dear friends with Scott Cassidy, so her real life husband. And so the scene that was happening in the comedy happened in real life. Like Scott, when they broke up, he came to our house and he was like, I don't know why she's breaking up with me and everything. And then they got back together again. So I was filming like her side of that chapter in their life. And it was a really, really funny episode, but it was very strange to see this sort of twisted other side. And then there was a future episode in the next season. I didn't direct it, but there was a character loosely based on me named Jessica who's a documentary film director. So they made it. Yeah, it was, oh my gosh. And it was, she had made a film called Best Friends about her friendship with Scott. And so they had these posters with this woman who was cast as Jessica Who. And I was like, can I have that poster? So I have it framed in my office, the famous documentary by Jessica Who.
Real quickly, if I may, talking about inspirations. When coming out to Los Angeles again, I couldn't work the whole thing. And I remember going to the Beverly Glen Market. I just watched the Emmys. So I went to Beverly Glen Market, and the man standing in line is Robert Butler. And I kind of walked up to him, not obnoxiously, and I talked to him a little bit, and he said he was writing a check. So he basically tore off the check and had a deposit slip in it, and had his phone number. He said, give me a call. And so basically, it's so crazy that we had lunch several times. He was a wonderful inspiration, such a kind man. And for us to have kind of a parallel career, I mean, he's a monster. He's the king of all. But to have kind of a parallel career has been a really interesting thing. And I love talking to him when I get a chance to see him.
Yeah, those who aren't familiar with the Bob Butler over, he did the pilots of Hill Street Blues and Superman and Moonlighting and other great shows. Yeah, that really helped establish their look and feel, and is a truly great man. So let's go a little deeper then, because some of you mentioned your family and some of you mentioned your life, and I'm very interested in knowing how your family figures into your inspiration. I mean, for example, I don't think I could do Sons of Anarchy today. Now that I've adopted these two boys and now that they're teenagers, I'm not sure I would be able to do that show. Not that it's a bad show, but I'm not sure I would make that choice because I've, since they've grown and since they've been a part of it, and they're two, African-American young men, I kind of wanted to do things that went in a different direction. Has your family influenced your work, and has it weighed on you in some cases, or are there sacrifices you've made for your family in order to do these things? Anyone wants to jump in?
Well, I would say that it definitely helps you choose. It gives you some clarity in wanting to work with people who are decent and wanting to work on a material that is great, because you feel that if you're going to be away from your family and doing this, it had better be worthwhile on that level. That said, I don't think that I choose things because of my family. I think my kids pay exactly the right amount of attention to what I do, which is not all that much, but we sat down, we watched the whole of Hollywood together. And at the end, there's this, again, spoiler alert, but Anna May Wong has this great moment on the Oscar stage, which obviously she didn't have in real life. It's very emotional. And at the end, I remember my 15-year-old, she was crying, and she turned to me and she said, "Mom, I'm so proud of you." And for me, that was just, okay, I'm good. I don't, that's all I need. So there are those little rewards that you get. And I think part of it comes from the choices that you make of what you want to work on.
I love that. David, you went off mute.
Yes, I'm off. Yeah, off mute. Yes. An interesting part of my career would be something, and it still affects me, and still I deal with it every day sometimes. It's the fact that when I go to direct, I put on my big boy shoes, put in my big boy pants, and I'm off to direct. And I have answers, and I'm smart, and I'm all that kind of stuff, and wise, and all these wonderful things. But the minute I'm not on set, the minute I'm not performing, I come home and I'm like, my son would say to my mom, my wife, he'd say, "Mom, what are you waiting on? Why are you doing that for? Why are you doing that?" Because she understood what it was all about. So to me, last year my wife died, and I realized how much she had influenced me and helped me through those many, many years where we did so much stuff together. She took care of the children and understood for me, and was just my total, pair as far as that was concerned. And we really bonded on that. And I think we bonded on raising our children and so forth. And now I'm just trying to find that strength and through changes in my own life and through relationships and so forth. And one in particular, I'm really starting to get that back again. And I hope to use that in a better way. I also, in 2016, I found out I had Parkinson's disease. And I said, "Oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me?" And they said, "Well, you take this medicine, you work hard, and keep your thing going, you'll be fine." And it hasn't affected me in any way. But it's made me more sensitive to people. It's made me more sensitive to the people I'm working with. And I enjoy myself a whole lot more. I didn't enjoy myself too much in directing because I beat myself up. I'd forget what I did the next show. I think I'd never done it before. This time when I did the last season of Game of Thrones, I was like, I got this handled. We'll be fine. I got this all taken care of. And it was a whole lot of fun. The last season was the best experience I ever had because I enjoyed it. I let myself enjoy it.
Mm. And David, you left out the year of back surgeries you had because it would just make you sound incredibly like Job, but you came back from that too. You recovered and you got back in the chair after not even being able to walk. So,
well, it's a situation where I think that if you want to direct and you love to direct, don't let anything stand in your way. You just can't.
I hear you. Anyone else want to join? Michelle or Ken?
Sure. My wife has always been very supportive of whatever I want to do, and however, my kids would put a tremendous guilt trip on me when I had to go out of town, and because they were young and they just didn't want me to be gone for 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks or however it took. So that was always hard. But so I just start to make better choices. If it was a show like 30 Rock, I would try to explain to them, like, I have to go do this show in New York, and it's really important. And so eventually they understood, but that was one of my biggest difficulties, really kind of explain to them when they were younger how important this was to my career. But also they needed me at home. I mean, my wife did an amazing job. She put her career on hold so I could live my dream. Mm-hmm. And so she has just been a wonderful support system. She's created a wonderful support system, I should say.
I just tell them, do you like this house? I got those. You like your bedroom? Michelle, do you want to add anything to that?
I would just say that I think I love directing, and as David said, if you love doing it, you got to do it. I'm sure it's how actors feel or writers feel, and I do love doing it, but I have sacrificed a lot in having the career that I have, and I've struggled a lot from not balancing my personal life and my career. And there's been very painful times. Directing can be really lonely. I mean, you're the leader on the set, and you've got to put your big boy pants on, as David says. And then a lot of times you go back to, in my case, an empty hotel room at night, and it can be hard. It can be really hard. And I always kind of thought everything, that the perfect picture would happen. You know, I'd meet Mr. Right, we'd have kids and a picket fence and a directing career. And I think some people do it. I mean, Jessica does it. You know, but it didn't happen that way for me. So I had to go about it a different way. And I have a beautiful little girl now. And she comes to set with me. And I remember when the first time she came to set, my parents were thinking, well, is that appropriate? And I thought, I get that everybody doesn't get to bring their child to set, and she's not like she's on the set all the time, but she's there with me because it's just the way my life is. I'm single. I don't have somebody to stay home and watch her. Obviously she has nannies, but I want her to be part of my world, and she's got a different upbringing, in some ways. And hopefully it is adventurous and exciting and wonderful. And I'm beyond grateful. And it gives me, I think, as a storyteller, it gives me insight into a new world that I didn't have. I mean, there are shows that I would say no to because of the pain of not having a family. I didn't want to put myself on those shows, which were about family. And now I can make different choices. I mean, as a result, I did really testosterone-driven stuff, which I love, and it's great. I wasn't making those choices to avoid anything. I was making those choices because I love doing it. But I feel that my choices are greater now, and I have a greater joy in what I'm doing.
I love that. I just got a question from member Benny Boom. He wants to know, how do you plant your flag in a show and become more than a guest director? How do you become more than a guest director? I think it's a great question for a lot of our members who are out there who aren't in the position that some of us are up here. How do you make your mark without breaking the place? I mean, what's the balance? How do you find it? You don't all of them have to answer that, but anyone who wants to tackle it, it's a good question.
I'll jump in quickly, and then I'm more. But I always liken it to probably being a chef. And you come over to somebody else's house, and you're going to cook in their kitchen with their pots and pans, and you're going to serve them dinner. And you want to make a fabulous dinner with their recipe, but you want to be invited back. So you want to have a little bit of spice of your own that makes what you did a little bit more identifiable to you and a little bit special. And I think that's, to me, a very basic way. I often say that to people who aren't in the business who ask that question. But I think that it really depends on the show as well. There's certain shows and there are not that many these days, but in the past, there's been certain shows which have a certain set look. And if you're going to be a guest director on that, you're going to stick to that. And maybe you'd add a little bit of spice here or there. I'm taking this opportunity to segue into complimenting David Nutter, because when I was first hired to do Game of Thrones, I called David and I said, David, could we please go for lunch? I want to ask you some advice. And he said, sure. So we went to lunch, and he said, Michelle, the best piece of advice I can give you about directing Game of Thrones is it's a Porsche, get in and drive it. And I was so grateful for that piece of advice. Not that they had all the money and time in the world, but they needed directors to come and go and challenge them to take this and do this with it, to lead a crew of 700 people or whatever it was. And it was so generous and kind of David to give me that advice, because I'd never done anything that big before. And it's as Jessica was saying, television has evolved into this incredibly creative medium, and we have so much more freedom than we've had in the past. And we get to take risks and we get to try things. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think bringing some of your flavor, something that you, from your point of view, or from the character's point of view, that you bring to the table, that just makes it a little bit, adds a little spice, can really be beneficial.
I love the spice metaphor. The simple way that I heard it, John Wells told me, who was the first person who hired me, he said, everybody wants another episode of ER, which was a show I was working on later, only better. So that's your job, to make another episode of ER, not a different show. Make this show, but better. And I think that's what I've always thought about, how you can do a little bit of spice, like you said, to improve it, but not too much. When Quentin Tarantino did ER, they were completely freaked out. It wasn't an episode of ER anymore. They lost what was the show. David, you want to add something to that?
Sure. I think, fortunately, I've had a lot of chances to work on shows that I really respect. And to me, as a guest director, I want to do the best episode of that show from my perspective. But it has to stay within the lines of the show, as everyone said. And I also feel it's really so very important to spend a lot of time with the writers. As an episodic director, writers are the ones that kind of took me to my second show, my third show, my fourth show, whatever, relationships. They're the most important relationships to have, because they are really sometimes really hire, the ones who have the power to hire and fire. So I think that it's very important to really get to know the writers and get to know what's in between the lines. Watch as many episodes as you can, and don't come in with a style and say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I let the script tell me where it's going to go. And I also use the limitations of what I've seen on the show before. Hopefully, my perspective, we give it something else, but it's really something that I want to, make me seamless in that respect.
And Jessica, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. What Michelle, what you said, Paris, what David has said, that it's less about putting your stamp on it than doing the most amazing job that you can. And I love Michelle's metaphor of cooking. We all have our different metaphors for how we think about being a guest director. I always feel like I'm the foreign exchange student, and you arrive and you go, oh, how do you do it in your country? In my country, we do this. And so there's a little bit like sharing of culture. And to speak to what David was saying about getting to know the writers, I would say everyone has their favorite prep meetings. I love the tone meeting, because I think that's the point, the time when you really get to talk about story. And if you have something in your bag of tricks that you really want to try, or you've got something that's bold that maybe you haven't seen on the show, it also can be a time to just feel that out and see if that is something that works within the vision of the show.
Cool.
And
I just want to move to moving forward now. We're going to go back to work before too long. It's going to be a new post-COVID world, and there's going to be a lot of protocols, as you saw yesterday from the announcements that went out. There's even more coming from the DGA soon. So things are going to change. I'm just wondering if you guys have given any thought to how your role as a director might change. I've been thinking about it a lot, but I've been thinking, I'm always sort of a safety Nazi. Those who've worked on shows and I've been on know that I'm nuts about safety and stunts. And now this has ignited a fuse in me to really increase my consciousness and my awareness of every crew member and how the choices I make impact that crew member and their health, including the length of the days and the kinds of shows I send. I'm just wondering if you guys have given any thought to that, how your job might be a little bit different in the post-COVID world and what you're intending to do.
Well, I think it's important for the director to make people feel that they're safe. Make people feel it's all going to be fine. And if anybody has a problem, speak up, speak up, speak up. I did a low budget movie called Transfers 4 and 5 in Romania many, many years ago. And they had just had a revolution. Ceausescu had just basically been killed, and these people were coming out of nothing. The AD would come to the set every morning, and he'd be singing, good morning, good morning. And it was a situation in which he made $40 a month, or $60 a month, I think. And I was really inspired by that. But of course, in going to Romania, this is the time that upheaval was happening. They had the big AIDS epidemic in the orphanages and so forth. And I brought everything for the crew. For the cast. I brought ketchup bags. I brought medicine. I brought all the stuff. I was like Miss Dr. Feelgood. And because it was all important that they came out of there without a scratch because they came there on my behalf. And that's something that it's so very important to let people know that they matter, of course, and let them know that anything they have to say, speak up.
Yeah. Anyone else want to tackle that?
Make our own family in shooting.
Yeah. Anyone else? Ken, you wanted to give it?
Sure. Yeah, I think doing your homework. I mean, really coming in more prepared, really having your shit together because time, we're not going to have a lot of time to spend on the set anymore. So I think really coming in, not waffling, really being definite about what you want to achieve to make the day go faster, and really caring. I mean, I naturally care about. I'm from the crew, so I love the crew, and I'm a crew guy at heart. So really making sure that everybody feels comfortable and everybody knows that we have, you have it together, and we're not going to be there all day. So I think that's going to be key. But as far as I don't know what the future is going to hold as far as testing, vaccines. I really don't know. But I think what I can do is try to streamline the day.
Yeah. And Jessica, I read in the DJ magazine back in 2012, you said, I've learned that you have to embrace your biggest obstacle.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that will come into play here with this new post-COVID world.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always found that extreme limitations are the source of great creativity. I mean, that's how it happens. And we're all problem solvers. I mean, this is so much of what we do in our job, and we're also communicators. And this is going to require a level of communication and trust that it's unprecedented. What I do hope is that it won't cost too many crew jobs in go forward. That's a huge, huge issue that I've thought a lot about. And then the other thing is, if it does affect hours, if we're doing French hours and if that becomes our day, there's a part of me that thinks maybe this will address an issue that we've all faced in the work that we do, is that sometimes our hours, we're all willing to work, we all do it, but sometimes our hours feel dangerous. And I think that this might be something that opens up that discussion.
Yeah, I agree. Michelle, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, the 10-hour day in overseas is a great day, and you get a lot of work done, that's for sure.
And you get to get home for dinner. Michelle?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to add to that was I do think, as David said, that our job is to make everybody feel safe and feel heard. But I think our industry has bad habits, especially in North America, and we work way too long of hours. And having experience working overseas where they work 10 hours, where you can have an 8 a.m. call and be done at 6, you can actually have a life. You can go home, work out, have dinner with your family, whatever it is. And those are really important. And I would love to see our industry in North America to change our habits and to work French hours or whatever it is that's appropriate for the specific show. Just because it's been away for a long time doesn't mean it has to continue being that way. It's unhealthy. And I think we should look at our habits and see how we can change them to just make it a better work environment for everybody.
I also want to do a quick commercial for the DGA team too, because I know we have a lot of team members who are listening in on this. I'm just imploring every director, not just the ones that hire on the show that I'm producing, but every director to really think about, how can I use this group more efficiently to get this done, to make everything more efficient? How much information can I give them? How much can I share? How quickly can I make decisions that will then allow the UPM and the ADs and the second ADs to do their job more efficiently? Because it's not shit that's rolling down. It's really the genius that rolls down. And I wonder if we also can help to make that commitment as directors to really just, keep everyone more informed than ever, closer to us than ever in our DGA team. I think that's the way we can make this roll better. Jessica, you want to say something? I'm sorry, I jumped in.
Oh, not at all. I was just going to say that, that one issue too that I think that might be affected in all this is just in episodic, the length of scripts that we get sometimes where oftentimes where we know this is not all going to fit in our cut. And so maybe, again, decision making to help appropriately fit the amount of days, the amount of hours that we have.
I think that's a really, really good point. So now let's move to this state of unrest we're in this state of, crazed national politics, the incredible inequities that we're seeing, just sort of ripped off the Band-Aid of institutional racism. It's all in our faces now. I mean, and I've been thinking a lot about what Dr. King said here, and I brought the quote, "The true measure of a man is not how he behaves in moments of comfort and convenience, but how he stands at times of controversy and challenge." So now I'm throwing down here. I'm saying, what can you do in your position as a director or sometimes as a producer to be part of the solution? What do you think the solution may be? I mean, we're responsible individual people, but we also have this enterprise that we're helming that sometimes has hundreds of people working on it and is its own little society. So there are things that we could do. There are things that we have control over. Have you thought about or have you considered how you might, as a director or as a storyteller, help to, if not balance, combat this situation we're in, the societal problem? It's a big question.
One thing I'll say is that I told you my past recently and so forth, and what's really happened for me, which has been a wonderful thing, is I found I have a relationship now that we're a real team. We really love each other, and it's a situation in which we want to go out and do stuff together because I needed to fix myself before I wanted to do anything. So she and I have talked about doing a lot of stuff. We've been helping me doing some food lines and donating here and donating there. And it's really important to really do that and feel part of the community. Also doing all the work with a lot of politicians' work as well.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else thinking about how this might make you a different kind of director?
I would say that so much of it is about choices and what we decide to work on and not work on, and what we decide to develop. I think a lot of us develop. Early in my career, I would take any job that somebody would offer me because I needed to get experience. And then I got to a point where I thought, well, actually, maybe I could start to ask to be on certain shows and be part of certain stories that meant something to me. And now I think that we're in a place where during times of great upheaval, people often turn to art for answers. And one of the strongest forms of communication is entertainment. And we can hopefully maybe start conversations, start people thinking. I mean, there's many people who already do this. Our show that we're just finishing has to do with immigration. And on the surface, we want it to be, we hope it's a entertaining action drama, but underneath, it's really a conversation between Mexico and America. And so we thought, let's try and make something entertaining that might help start a conversation, that may open people's eyes to look at things differently and to see that our world isn't black and white, it's gray. And that we need to understand that there's different points of view from different walks of life. Not everybody has the same experiences, but at the base of it all, we're all human. And I think that what we're fortunate enough to do for a living is we communicate to a lot of people, and that maybe our choices in what we do can help shine lights on things, start conversations.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I think through comedy, I think it's very important to kind of shine a light on some of the ridiculous ways we look at people, and just kind of show that we're all alike, that we're all the same. And we just do it in a comedic way without being too political and about being accusatory or anything like that. Just kind of shining a light on how, some of our thoughts may be a little off and without being insulting. So I think it's a very fine line. You just have to really do it in a very clever way. So I think that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because my wife and I, we are right. And the reason I'm saying that, my wife and I are writing a show right now while we have this time off, and we're really tackling a lot of issues that are going on right now in the world and the way people look at each other. And then we're doing it in a very comedic way without being, accusatory or insulting or rude or whatever. So I think that's my goal.
Jessica, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say with what Michelle said really resonates with that it comes down to choices, the kind of work that you want to do. I think it also comes down to some things that I'm sure everybody in this group does. Mentorship, trying to help others come up to be able to tell their stories. When you have some influence, some power over hiring, trying to continue to be inclusive and give people a chance. Again, these are all tools that will help them to be able to tell their stories. And then, again, I've always had projects that are more passion projects in parallel with my other work. And so, like right now, I'm adapting a Chinese American young novelist's first book into a series. And again, it's just choosing those things where, hey, this is time, this is effort that I really want to put somewhere that's going to matter and put something in the world that maybe we haven't seen yet, or we don't see enough of. So.
Yeah. I just implore everybody, I think every choice that you're making when you're a director can impact the story and impact the audience. And whether you cast black men as robbers, whether you cast, this, Chinese American woman to be murdered, everything that you do has an impact. And so I'm just saying you have to look at all these choices. You may not have written the story, but you can help to develop it. You can impact on it. And the way that you present it is going to be critical towards how it's perceived. And we cannot discount the power that this media has. It has enormous power. And I think it's going to be one of the keys to change if we're ever going to get past this moment. It's going to be in the stories we tell and how compelling we can tell them. I'm fortunate that I'm in Shondaland, where that's just like the rule. We just go there. It's always about going there and finding the story that matters. So not everyone is. Okay, so we have gotten some more questions from our audience, and they're really interesting. They generally fallen down into, we could do this as a lightning round. People really want to know just, the 3 things they can do to make it into the director's chair. A lot of people listening to this have not gotten their first episode yet. So what are the 3 things, just, really simple, that they can do, that they have to do in today's environment to get into the director's chair? Anyone?
Well, you have to make a short film. You have to show people you know how to direct. You have to show people that you've got what that takes. Because as people are looking for directors all the time, like horror movies, for instance, they want to see someone done a horror movie. Maybe not a great horror movie, but he's done a horror movie at least. And It's important, right, to try to go out and do something to show people.
You got to have something to show. What else?
That's everything.
I would say one thing is, it's hard to go out and shoot right now, but if you have any footage, even if it's a film you've already worked on, spending more time thinking about doing editing. There's times when I've thought, oh gosh, I would love to actually recut something I've done before. You learn so much about your own failings as a director when you edit. You learn about how to put the story together, what shots you really need. So that is something I think could be really useful. Just totally the craft, right?
As soon as things open up, if you want to be a director, take an acting class and take a directing class. I mean, an acting class is even more important. So you really know if you're coming from a different area, or even if you've been an AD and you think you've seen a lot of it, an acting class can really help you with that communication.
Yeah, I agree with you, Paris, 100%. I was just going to say that acting classes are so important because you have to be able to communicate with actors and effectively. And I also, Jessica, I agree with you as well. If you understand the editing process, then you don't shoot a lot of stuff that you really don't need. And so I really think that that's an important class. So I know at the beginning of my career, I used to sit in with a guy named Henry Chan, and Henry, I would just sit in him for hours to understand editing, and it helped me so much as a director. So I would agree with both of you on that.
Anything else anyone wants to add? Quick tips?
I guess really quick, I would say, because I agree with everything that these guys are saying, is also, if you've directed something, if you've directed a 2-minute short, you are a director. Tell everybody that you want to be a director. Say that you are a director. Be tenacious. Be confident. And yet humble. You don't want to oversell yourself, but believe that you have that ability, believe in what you can do, and let everybody know. Even if you're PAing and you're talking to the director, let them know that you're directing short films on the weekends. And everybody understands that you've got to start somewhere. Everybody's got a cell phone. You can make a movie with that. You can make a 3-minute movie with that. Practice, practice, practice.
Some questions are about what has helped you. What's the valuable thing you learned that's helped you to direct actors better? I just say be kind. You know, in everything that you say, be kind. They're really very sensitive, very thoughtful, and most actors really care. And they're not up for just being manipulated or being brusquely shoved aside. You should talk to them with the kindness that you would talk to someone you love. And maybe you even might love these actors, which makes it even easier. But you can be funny, you can be light, but you must be kind. They will not hear anything you say if it comes from a place of control. And I need you to stand over here. Directing actors is about the kind expression of what the actor needs to hear to make the character move forward. That's just one. Anyone else have any thoughts on directing actors quickly?
I think getting to know them is a very important thing as well. And that's such an important thing to do that. And also, I think it's very important to be intimate with actors. You know, I hear actors a lot of times will tell me, you know, he's yelling at me from the video booth and I can hear me. He's yelling at me to do this, say this louder, or whatever. And I never do that. I've never done that ever. I always walk up to the actors and we talk amongst ourselves, and it's a very intimate situation. And I don't share that with anybody. That's really their time, because I always say that, you know, acting is like standing in front of a room, totally naked and turning around very slowly. And it's something that's really what that's all about. And I think it's a situation where, to me, I want the actors to feel comfortable in that respect.
I would also add, just every note that you give, make sure you understand why you're giving that note, what the motivation is of that note. You don't want to ask somebody to stand somewhere just because it's better lighting. You need to come to them with the purpose of the character and the story. And if you connect with them on that level, they'll respect that. And the other thing is to be prepared, really understand what it is that you want and need. And that will give them the confidence to listen to you. And also make sure you listen to them. It is so important, I think, when you first get to set and you're doing rehearsals and everything, don't ever give a note until you've seen what the actors bring to the table. They've been at home, they've been rehearsing, they've been practicing. Let them show you what they're going to bring. They might surprise you, and it might be completely different from what you planned, and it's better. But it's so important that they are seen and heard, because as David said, that it's very exposing for them. And they want to feel safe and protected and heard.
I love that.
And I would also, one other thing I would say, also give the actors a couple of takes to find it. Maybe don't rush in right away giving notes, because also, you know, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and you're directing comedy. Nothing's funny at 7 a.m. So you want to give people a chance to warm up. And also, I think it's very important to the actors to know that you understand the show. You've watched the show. You've seen episodes, and you're invested in the show. So you can even refer back to, you know, the thing you did in season 2, episode 3, where you said blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, that gives them a comfort factor to know that you know the show. You're just not some guy in there trying to get a check.
I think that's very important. Quick, and I'll just say that it's also important to dig into their background and tell them something that not anyone else would tell them. I was working with Jonathan Pryce, and I had to meet Jonathan Pryce. He said, he's a tremendous actor. And we sat down and said, what can I say to be different? And I said, Jonathan, I must tell you, I think you're the greatest listener I've ever watched as an actor. And I talked about the Glenn Ross scene where Al Pacino's at the bar, talked to him about this just totally talking to him and talking. And Jonathan's just looking at him. And the minute I hit him on that moment and touched him on that moment, from that on, he was like totally cool, totally relaxed. And that's a very important thing as well, to really do that, because all actors, again, want to be directed. And if they respect you, then, you know, I was even gave Jonathan Pryce a line reading for a line once after I'd gotten known well enough. He was totally cool.
Great. So now I want to get towards the end here. And I'm just wondering, and I really am wondering this, and I hope you'll tell me as genuinely as you can, how are you keeping hope alive? It's so easy to despair right now. I mean, it's so, if you actually are a Twitter follower like I am, and, you know, I've just started to block and mute as I go through, because I can't take so much negativity. And I've reduced the news to a certain amount of time per day. We sit down and watch it with the kids, watch Anderson Cooper and talk about what we've seen. But how do you keep hope alive in a time like this? I mean, we're not directing. We're not doing what we love. What is your strategy? I mean, what do you do both physically and emotionally to keep hope alive?
A vote.
But what are you doing today, is what I mean. Voting, yes, we all must do, but today.
Today.
I would say finding something.
Hang on, let's go with Jessica first.
Yes.
We're just going to say, I'm finding things to, projects, I'm just trying to continue to work. And you know how it is when we're directing and we're sort of overwhelmed by schedule and everything we have to do. And we think about those things. Oh, if I only had time to work on that thing. So I'm working on those things. And again, it's hard. You've got to find something that is really going to matter to you and take up that focus, because it's so easy to get distracted by the constant barrage of everything that matters out there that we can't control. So yeah, just
David, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that I think it's important to do something you haven't done before, learn something else, practice something else, widen your own perspective, your own horizons. There's lots of things I've been doing for myself and things I've never done before. And just here's a simple quest: is I was dying watching MSNBC every night. So my girlfriend got me into watching South Park. I'm now aficionado, and Friends, which are two shows I never watched. But it's something I saw a different perspective in these shows and why people like them, and it helped. I think it's broadening out my perspective.
Yeah. Michelle or Ken, how are you keeping hope alive?
Well, I'm again trying different things, doing different things that I never thought I would be into. My wife and I are kind of into homesteading now, where we started a garden, and so now we're eating vegetables from the garden. And also we're talking about getting chickens and having eggs. And
wow, I'm not going to go that far.
Well, catch some chickens and get some beans again.
But so we're just trying to live a little bit more natural and just know that times could get tougher, but we will survive. And I think we just have to really look out for ourselves and just go back to a simpler way of life. And so that's what we've kind of been doing lately.
Michelle?
I'm in post, and I'm working very long days from home remotely in post. That's keeping me very busy right now. And something I've noticed, I'm on Zoom for hours and hours a day with different people, whether it's sound mixers or color timers or actors who are doing ADR from their closets at home. And I'm getting to have conversations with these people that I would never have. We'd come in, we'd focus on work, and we'd leave. And we're going to each other's homes. And I'm finding that once in a while, we'll get on a ADR session with an actor, and they need to talk. They've been stuck by themselves for 2 months, and they need a conversation. And we just stop all the work, and we'll sit, and we'll talk on Zoom for an hour. And I think it's just realizing for me right now that, yes, we have our schedule and we have this pressure to get the show done. But that's just one small, tiny thing that seeing human beings caring about each other and stopping to have those moments and those conversations is really important. And I think that a lot of those conversations, we're talking about the future, what we're going to look forward to the future. And that always in a positive way. And I think that that's always helpful and fun, and to kind of dream together about what we'll do this, when, or that. And that's super exciting. And it's also, we're talking about what's happening right now. And we're having these really interesting, powerful conversations about the horrific state of our country. And I think these feelings and these emotions and these conversations are going to affect the stories that we tell in the future. So remembering our experiences at this time, I think, are just as important as looking the future positively for new stories that we can tell.
I do love that. And as I've been telling the boys here in Casa Su Barclay, we've been here before. I mean, not exactly in this situation, but some of us who are ancient have been through the 60s and the revolution and the assassination of King and Robert Kennedy. And we got around that, and we built really a movement on all of those horrible times and those problems. And we've been specifically here in LA with the riots after Rodney King. And we've gotten through that. And we've gotten a different kind of mayor and a different kind of governor, a different kind of guidance. But this is going to be a tough one. But I think focusing on the potential is the way to go, focusing on the pendulum swinging back, because the pendulum keeps swinging, from one way to the other. That's how Barack became president. It was a swing of the pendulum. It's going to swing back. And I do believe there is reason for us to hope that the world will be better and to focus on being a part of that. And just before I close, I want to thank the panelists who have been fabulous for their time and their wisdom and their hearts. We really appreciate it. So with that, thank you all for joining us at the second webinar. We hope we're helpful. And please stay safe and keep hope alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Paris.
Thank you, Paris. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Director's Cut. Past episodes are available wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.